Hey everyone, James from TDB here. Today am going to be talking about the evolution of hobbyist vendors in the very niche tea scene, specifically kind of pu'erh scene. And this is one where I actually released an article a few months back, so go ahead and check that out on tdb.org. We are indeed, again, a real place where we're releasing written content. I know, it's 2025, ridiculous. And so this is a topic I've thought a lot about, and when the pandemic hit, I kind of went into sort of autopilot as far as tea goes. Not to say I wasn't drinking it, I was drinking it basically daily, and nor was I not thinking about it at all, but I had kind of reached a state where I knew what I liked, and I was a little burnt out as far as creating new content or exploring different things. And so it was a little bit more of a slow burn phase rather than kind of like, ooh, I'm really curious about this and this and this. Whereas I think a lot of people, actually, there was a big pandemic wave into the tea hobby. So that was really interesting because I was kind of going down and other people were ramping up and getting really interested in stuff. So actually, like, traffic and the amount of views that we're getting on TDB boomed, and I think if we were a little bit more savvy or on top of it, we could have capitalized a little bit more on that. But you know what, it's fine. This is something that we do for fun. And so it's something that I've observed as a bit of a shift in how this very niche tea scene has changed quite a bit. Because back when I was getting started, 2013, 2014, basically what would happen is you would have these new operations that would sprout up now and then. In fact, many of them still exist. And what was that operation? It wasn't necessarily like this hobbyist thing where people that don't really need to make a living with the tea source a bunch of stuff from Taiwan or anything like that. It was different. People would go to Yunnan and they would start to press under their own labels. And early on, I was someone that was curious about this, and so I sampled a ton of the tea, and I very quickly, after a year or so, got pretty bored of it. Young tea wasn't hugely my thing. I bought a few cakes, but I didn't buy all that much in the scheme of things. So coming back to it now, it's like the operations and the vendors that have started since then, really talking about like the late 2010s. I'm talking about people like Teas We Like and Liquid Proust, and more recently Quiche, are people that don't really need to make a living from it. In fact, this is far more of kind of a side hobby, side hustle, side business, whatever you want to call it. It's a little bit unclear how much money people make. And I think Teas We Like can really be credited as kind of booting this up and has really kind of captured and shaped the market in different ways. On one hand, they have teas that are very obvious, like Be On How teas or whatever, and so people will go in there and they will also try to find similar sorts of teas by creating. They've really kind of popularized a couple vendors, well, not vendors, but tea operations such as that, or Genuine How, their early productions, and so you have kind of the copycats and people that are following a similar sort of model. I wouldn't call Liquid Proust a copycat, but he definitely has sourced some of the same sorts of teas. He's gotten Malaysian sources, that sort of thing as well. And these vendors in general, I think, mark their tea up quite a bit less than we're talking about, like kind of the people that are going to Yunnan and pressing their tea, where it's very, very difficult to know actually what the markup is for those sorts of teas. When it comes to, like, I don't know, let's say the 2005 Non-Chow Double Lions, it's like, okay, you have some idea of what the market price might be because Teas We Like is marking up by X percentage, and LP or whoever or someone else sourcing it is marking up here. And their sources might be similar but different or whatnot. But the markup in general for those is quite a bit less than, I think, the people that are doing the custom pressing. And so eventually you have a vendor like Quiche who comes in and he's basically drop shipping from a option like Taishan He here. And there's a certain appeal in this because he's not doing anything crazy, but he's simply making one Eastern facing option available. And there is definitely a lot of appeal in that because there's just simply having access to that sort of pu'erh shop means that these Taishan He is not trying to necessarily outcompete these Western vendors. They are mostly trying to sell to people in Taiwan, and so their tea is priced accordingly, meaning a bit lower. And so it's a very interesting dynamic because I do feel like if you were to just buy randomly from the dropshipper, Quiche, you would probably end up doing pretty well, even if you had no idea what you're doing, versus buying from kind of a more specialized, quote unquote, curated vendor. I don't know, like the big ones these days, like Jesse's Tea Leaf or Mayleaf or whatever, or even some of like the big ones that are pressing their own teas. You would maybe get an okay exploration of Young Pu'erh there, but I think the kind of random scattershot approach from Quiche, where you're going to end up with a bunch of factory cakes, would probably set you up a little bit better as far as going forward, specifically because it focuses on factory teas, and because the markup is so low, you are getting very, very good bang for your buck. In fact, I would say that these vendors are probably, all of the vendors I've mentioned here are probably kind of the best sort of bang for your buck when it comes to tea that specifically appeals to me, but like kind of that semi-aged factory boutique range. So yeah, it's interesting just to see the way that it's developed, where you have a vendor like Quiche who's not doing any of that curating that Teas We Like has done in the past with their panels and tasting stuff blind and whatnot, and he basically is just going in and go into Taishan He and be like, okay, here's your catalog, we're going to list it on a Shopify site. So yeah, it's just been really fascinating the way that stuff has evolved, and I think it is a good thing for the tea community to have access to something like Taishan He, regardless of your feelings on Quiche in particular. And I think these vendors like Teas We Like and LP have done a good job in terms of pushing different access and whatnot. So I've been pleasantly surprised, because back 10, 11 years ago, people were just like, okay, we're just going to buy all of these different Young Pu'erhs. And if you're someone like myself who was like, okay, but you know, what if this is like not the right match for me? What if I don't really care for Young Pu'erh? You're basically stuck kind of going through Taobao and stuff like that, which are things that I've done. But when you're blind buying cakes, you can, it's a very quick way to run a budget. There's a lot of hurdles that you have to do, specifically buying Taobao here in the West. So I am grateful for these different vendors existing, just because it gives us a lot better options than what was available back in 2014, 2015. So that was a little bit rambling. Hopefully it makes some coherent sense. Check out the article, which is probably a lot more cohesive on the site, and I will see y'all next time. Cheers.